Welcome to Paranormal Into the Night in freezing Cleveland, Ohio. I am your host, Dino Ewelt, and if you are on YouTube catching us live, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, hit the everything you can. And the links below to to our guest, his website, his books, his videos, everything are down below, so check them out. Sorry, guys, it's been a while since I did a live on here, but we got a great guest, and I'm very excited to get this going and talk about the Great Pyramids. But you can also find our show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, anywhere you find podcasts, you can find it. We have Stephen Myers with us today, and it's going to be an interesting show. He has some very interesting thoughts on the Great Pyramid itself, and I can't wait to get into it with him. Everybody in the chat, thank you very much for showing up, and feel free to ask any questions if you have any for the guest. And I had a long drawn out intro that I was going to do, and I'm like kind of froze a little bit here because it's been so long. But Stephen, how are you doing?
I'm doing well out here in Oregon.
Yes. Thank you for coming on and talking with me. I am in the midst of early cold weather here in Cleveland, Ohio, so it's cold. I think it got down to 20 degrees the other day. So,
Oh, well, that happens. Well, out here in Oregon, it usually rains all winter, so it's one thing or another.
Exactly. Yeah, everybody's got their own gripes and weather gripes and all that good stuff. But yeah, I got a couple. Felix from my other channel and Eric Griffin. You are in the chat here on YouTube. William Stillings is saying hi, Stephen. You're an awesome guy. He's already talking about dual harmonic generator gravity, so maybe you can touch on that a little bit later. But again, thanks for everybody showing up in the chat. I appreciate it. Again, this will go out to all other platforms, but I once edited and put out there. But I do want to start doing this live on YouTube, just to interact with people. It's a little bit, and for a while there, I was doing live on Facebook, but yeah. I'm going to narrow things down a bit. Oh boy, what's going on here? I will read that in a second. William. But anyways, Stephen Myers. Again, all his links are down below. I would suggest you go hit them if you're interested in anything he's about to talk about. First, I'd like to say, and let's just start off because my show is very casual. I'd like to know a little bit about Stephen Myers, who you are, what got you into investigating or doing research on the Great Pyramid itself, and coming up with what you think it's all about and how it came to be. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well, my education and occupation have been always of a technical orientation. Very technical. I have an interest in technology. I'm an amateur radio operator. I collect antique gasoline engines and also enjoy history. When studying the Great Pyramid when studying like World War II in high school, I was more interested in the battleships and the range of airplanes and that type of thing, much more than the generals or the politics. So I've always enjoyed technology. You have the commercial FCC radio telephone license and a number of other degrees and certificates. But if a person likes history and also technology, then there's a good chance they'll have an interest in the Great Pyramid. It's a 45-story skyscraper that was built in ancient times and exhibits some aspects of it that seem to be of really high technology. So I became interested in it and read all the regular books, certainly by Egyptologists, and I learned that they had some ideas about a big ramp and all of that. But I found out that Egyptology doesn't engage in the scientific method. They just make up stories, and they don't substantiate it with demonstrations. And then I read alternative books, like about the Great Pyramid making microwave energy, or being like a weapon, or something to do with aliens. And, I certainly read those books. But then I found another book called Pharaoh's Pump, privately published by Edward Kunkel, originally in 1962. And that was quite interesting. Didn't talk about language or religion or gods or pharaohs, but he talked about how the Great Pyramid was assembled and the technical aspects, and also why it was assembled. So then I went and ultimately started a nonprofit foundation, and here I am.
Yeah, so that book in particular is what kind of jump started you on this whole water pump theory.
It did. It
Okay.
did. It was very instrumental in
But
the
were you?
development of my research. It was originally published in '62.
Mhm.
That's over, it's like 50 years ago or more.
It was a
So,
while ago, yeah.
yeah, that direction of research has certainly been developed since then. So, yeah, that was an instrumental book.
And
The book
isn't it
Pharaoh's
funny?
Pump is
Oh, go
what we
ahead.
named our foundation after. The Pharaoh's Pump Foundation, a 501c3 foundation,
Mhm.
with our website at thepump.org. And also, I dedicated my first book to Edward Kunkel. So my second book has a whole chapter about him. So
Hmm. And that's pretty easy to remember. Thepump.org.
thepump.org. Yes.
Yeah. So go check that out. But well, it's amazing how really we're still trying to figure out what it's all about. The Great Pyramid. I mean, maybe not in your mind, but in the paranormal field, or whatever you want, historical field, people still have many different theories, and I've been doing a little bit of research. There's many people who kind of try to say the water pump theory just is nothing. That's not true at all, which we'll get into. You are going to explain to us exactly why, but prior to that, I'm sure you jumped on the bandwagon of the ancient aliens, and it was built by aliens, and all that other good stuff. I'm sure at first, right?
Well, I've certainly considered everything, including the idea that the Great Pyramid was built to confirm Bible prophecy. There's a lot of correlations that people have come up with between the Great Pyramid and the Bible. There's a whole host of reasons that have been offered for the purpose of the Great Pyramid. So,
Right.
the aliens and all of that. So,
And we'll
certainly
talk.
familiar with all of it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about all. I have a list of some theories and stuff I'd like to just get your ideas on a little bit later in the show. But yeah, I guess we can start right off with what. Boy, should we start with why they built the pyramid, or what its function was? I'll let you take that.
Well, we should start with how it was built, and then
Or there you go.
after they had it built, what did they do with it?
Okay. How was the Great Pyramid built, Stephen
I,
Myers?
okay. I think that there's a fundamental link or relationship between the Great Pyramid and water. And I think that water was instrumental in the construction of the Great Pyramid. I think that the process the Great Pyramid was built is that they first put the casing stones for the first level of the Great Pyramid in place. And those stones that still remain are bonded together watertight with a very strong bonding agent. So if you have those stones in place, the casing stones that used to cover the Great Pyramid, just the first level, and filled that enclosure, if you will, that square enclosure with water, you would have a square pond. at the Great
Well, you say,
Pyramid
let me
construction
interrupt it
site.
real quick. When I hear something and I just need to know a little bit more information on it, I'll jump in real quick. Sorry, but you said a bonding agent. What kind of bonding agent? And is like, have people figured this out and dissected that? Hey, there is a bonding agent between these rocks or these stones.
Well, when you say have people figured it out, there's a bonding agent between the casing stones. That's evidence,
Okay.
and everyone you talk to will provide an interpretation of evidence. But the nature of the bonding agent
Hmm.
and what it was made of is under scholarly debate. It's known
Okay.
for being stronger than the stone itself, and you can just word search bonding agent or um, something like that on Google with Great Pyramid, and you'll come up with scads of information. But there was some sort of a bonding agent. Could have been a lost technology
Hmm.
associated with the Great Pyramid. That's part of the title of my first book.
Hmm.
But this bonding agent was very strong. And there's no really debate about that. But anyway, they
Okay.
used that bonding agent.
Okay.
And so they had a watertight enclosure about 5 feet, 4.5 feet, 5 feet deep. And I think that they built water locks like those of the Erie Canal back where you're at, kind of.
Yeah,
Or
like actually,
yeah.
actually a mile away from me, we have the Erie Canal. So yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, the Erie Canal, and it is water locks are kind of an anti-gravity device, if you will.
Hmm.
They make boats, big heavy boats, go up. So we think that they had water locks from the Nile River all the way up to the building site that connected into that square pond. So stones on barges could go from the Nile River all the way up to the construction site and into that square pond. And when the interior stones for the first level of the Great Pyramid were set into the pond, just set down in there, then
Hmm.
the first level of the Great Pyramid was completed. And then they continued that process. The next step would be to put the second layer of casing stones on top of the first layer, and then add additional water into that pond,
Hmm.
and then after that bring the stones for the interior stones for the second level all the way up into the that second pond with water locks, if you will,
Hmm.
and continue the process. It's kind of a production line um, process. The Erie Canal, in 2 years, was able to move the weight of the Great Pyramid higher than the height of the Great Pyramid.
Hmm.
So water locks are very fast, powerful, efficient, and controllable. So we have a video series that's available to view on our website that describes this process in great detail. So they can view those on our website.
Okay. Has any of the water locks been uncovered?
No, none of the water locks have been uncovered to build the Great Pyramid.
Okay.
After the Great Pyramid was assembled, they were no longer needed. But there's the Great Pyramid
Hmm.
is direct physical evidence that is like a puzzle with many pieces missing. There's no pharaoh that was ever found in the Great Pyramid. There's no treasure that was ever found. There's no capstone that was ever found, and on and on and on. So just because there's not working water locks at the Great Pyramid doesn't
Yeah.
preclude that they were never there. So, but there's a lot of evidence
Well,
for water.
okay, yeah, I just figured because I mean, even here, I walk the canal, the path all the time, and they're still there, remnants of the, whatever they used to, close them up and stuff are still there along the
Oh,
Erie
yeah.
Canal itself. And you would think that some would be left behind, but I understand what you're saying that if they don't need it no more, then so be it. And it was a very long time ago, but
A lot of it was built on solid bedrock, so
hmm,
a lot has been changed in the last 4,500 years or however long ago the Great Pyramid was built. But Sir Flanders Petrie found Nile earth inside the Great Pyramid, which is understood to be sediment.
Hmm.
And the waterlock, or the casing stones and other stones, are bonded together watertight. Herodotus described the Great Pyramid as being like a island surrounded by water. So some people say, oh, well, that's just a metaphor. But the Great Pyramid used to be surrounded by a retaining wall, and we think that was part of the construction process. So,
could Nile Earth have been in there because of from the floods themselves that happened? I mean, because there's total evidence of like flooding, even around the Sphinx and stuff like that too.
oh yes, yeah. Well, water certainly. That's just a piece of evidence about sediment inside the Great Pyramid.
Okay. And I'm trying to put in a picture in my head. I should have looked at some visuals beforehand, but the pond itself, filling that up with water, when they brung the stones up through the locks themselves, wasn't the pond filled in then subsequently?
Yeah, the pond was supplied with water, enough water to keep the pond full, as well as keep the water locks operational. They take a lot of water.
So how many ponds would be on one another? I mean, they would continue to go up all the way to the capstone, right?
All the way up to the capstone. That is correct.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So they would build it level by level, including casing stones.
That's a pretty big lock, then, huh?
No, it's not. It wouldn't be a big lock.
Okay.
They would have a series of water locks up probably the north side of the Great Pyramid.
Okay.
They would have what they call a flight. More than one water lock connected to another is considered a flight.
Okay.
So there'd be a flight of water locks up the side of the Great Pyramid, if you will. They would be incorporated into the casing stones. And then when the Great Pyramid was finished, then they were removed. So, in effect, Herodotus said he was told in the 5th century BC that the Great Pyramid was built from the bottom up, but it was completed from the top down. So they removed the water locks from the top down. So,
okay, that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, Sir Flanders Petrie wrote about the Great Pyramid, and he said that the sequence of construction was that it was built level by level, including the casing stones that were on the outside. Mm-hmm. And he said for each level, his interpretation of how it was built was that the casing stones for each level were set in place first, and then the stones for that level, the interior stones, were set in place. So this sequence of construction is consistent with his interpretation of the sequence of construction.
Okay. And what do you say to the people who try to debunk you? I mean, do you just not even care? Do you just, what are your thoughts on those individuals?
Well, there's different people with different ideas or different notions. Certainly, Egyptologists. I'm kind of faced with a wall of silence, if you will. A lot of them don't even acknowledge this explanation of the same direct physical evidence that everyone has. But there's other people that actually have done something, as opposed to Egyptologists, who have never made a casing stone in the manner they say it was done. Mm-hmm. Extreme precision using hand tools, right. Chipping away. No, it's never been done. As many cows have jumped over the moon as Egyptologists have made a casing stone.
Yeah.
So,
okay, yeah.
What am I getting at? Oh, the detractors. Oh, yeah, there's people that are detractors, certainly. But there's also people that have actually done stuff, like machinists or car mechanics, or people that work in the shipyards that actually know what it takes to lift and move a heavy object. Those people say, wow, your explanation is compelling.
Yeah.
And there's also people in I don't know what you want to call it, far out crowd who says, oh, no, they didn't need water locks. They used a magic wand, or they had aliens do it.
Yeah, we'll get to that, Stephen. But
yeah, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say it's compelling. Other people say, oh, no, water locks are too primitive. But water locks are the 21st century technology of choice to move our heaviest objects.
Yep, that's true.
That's why they expanded the Panama Canal. They didn't use a magic wand, say, oh, yeah, we don't need bigger water locks. We'll use a magic wand, or we'll have aliens do it, or whatever. Those people were engineers that had to actually do something, which is a lot different than an Egyptologist.
Right.
And they made larger water locks to move our heaviest objects.
Yeah, no. And
I can move a battleship.
Right.
I can lift a battleship through a Panama Canal.
Yes, you
by
can.
pressing buttons.
Yep. Oh, yeah, no, for sure. And even if you go back, I mean, there's definitely been a lot of evidence of water in and around the, Great Pyramid, the Sphinx itself. So there's evidence of water. The Nile is a bit away, but, it's close enough that, that's even plausible to, so we really don't know. It's so long ago. I mean, what are your thoughts on when the Great Pyramid was actually built?
Well, there's a lot of things that we don't know,
right?
But someone can make a hypothesis like, oh, they moved the stones on a big ramp. And then a way of knowing is to use the scientific method and see if that's really a plausible method. Right. But the science of Egyptology has never moved the largest stones 1 inch. So they're experts that can't do something.
Right.
So that's something to consider. But the age of the Great Pyramid is under scholarly debate, and it's actually beyond the scope of my research.
Yeah, no, Stephen, no, that's one of the things that gets to me. I mean, it is tough. I mean, people can throw out numbers, dates, this and that, the carbon dating system and everything, and still they debate how old things are, how old's the universe, this and that. We still really don't know. We throw things out there, but in the end, do we 100% know? I don't think we do, right?
I certainly don't know. It's not my research is about how it was assembled and why.
Right.
The age. Let's say we found out for sure. We absolutely found out that it was built 10,000 years ago.
Yeah.
The date of construction was 10,000 years ago from today. We know that. Mm-hmm. What's that going to tell us? What does that tell you? Yeah. Well, yeah. Okay. The very next question you'd ask is, well, how did they do it?
Well, the one thing
why did they build that big thing?
Right.
I focus on how when it was built for several reasons. One is that it doesn't help anybody.
Well, I think knowing the age, if we were 100% certain that we could say, hey, it's this old, this is the age of the Great Pyramid. I think one of the important things for that is, say it's 20,000 years old,
Mm-hmm. I have no problem with that.
And the farther and farther we go back, the more plausible it is that the environment was different. There may have been more water. There may, all these things that can change a theory, you know what I mean, start to pop up here and there. So age is kind of important, I think, but I get what you're saying for sure. I really do.
It could be, pre-last ice age or pre-biblical flood, if you want to go that way. Mm-hmm. But certainly I'm a catastrophist, and that history has been punctuated by catastrophes, and it might have been pre-asteroid strike or whatever. But I do think it's much older than Egyptologists say it is, because I don't believe a word they say. I really don't.
No, I hear you.
The greatest hindrance to understanding the Great Pyramid is Egyptology.
Yeah, true. They like to get a lot of, dare I say, false information out there. For what reason, I don't know.
It's true, but I think that it's incorrect, and it can be disproven, certainly.
Yeah, I think they know a lot more than they lead on with, but
I do, and I also think some of them are just, they sat in class and were told stuff, and then
Right.
they graduate, and then they tell people the stuff they were told. So
Exactly. Our
I think there's a
textbooks.
lot of that too.
Yeah.
Of all the sciences, you count, medicine, mathematics,
Mm-hmm.
physics, chemistry. The only science that is stagnated is Egyptology. It's the same as it was 200 years ago. Yeah, there were tombs, and the ancient Egyptians had big back muscles, and they liked to build the big ramp, and they made these big tombs.
Mm. Yep. Hundreds and thousands of giant slaves is what they say. But yeah.
Oh yeah.
How about isn't there some data? I can't for the life of me get in my head, but something underneath the Great Pyramid itself. Isn't there some kind of water pump underneath the pyramid itself? I thought there were some signs of water underneath the Great Pyramid. Am I
Oh,
wrong?
certainly. The Great Pyramid is built upon a solid bedrock, but about 100 feet below the Great Pyramid is the subterranean chamber,
Mm-hmm.
and it is reached through the descending passage that goes from the outside of the Great Pyramid down about 300 feet or so,
Mm-hmm.
straight down to the subterranean chamber. We think that the original builders supplied water to the construction site. Other researchers contend that water was made available by the original builders to the Great Pyramid. That includes Christopher Dunn and other people that focus on technical issues.
Mm-hmm.
So that water went ultimately into the subterranean chamber, and we think that subterranean chamber was a type of pump that supplied water up through the grotto and up into that pond. So the pond was kept full, even though this pond moved higher each level.
Yeah.
It was still supplied with water, and that water could supply the water lock. So that was kind of like in modern times, the first thing they do at a construction site after they do the foundation is to build the tall cranes, the tall spindly cranes,
Mm-hmm.
and they lift the payloads to build skyscrapers, in effect, level by level from the bottom up.
Right.
Well, in ancient times, they used the buoyancy of water to lift stones essentially from the bottom up, if you will, with water, and moved these heavy payloads up the water locks and up into that pond. I call it the construction pond.
Mm-hmm.
That ultimately is where all the action happened, and built the Great Pyramid that way. So it was an efficient process, didn't require huge back muscles. The size of the components are beyond the scope of knuckle draggers hauling stones up a ramp. So,
Yeah.
but water locks are certainly, an efficient method that seems to be consistent with the direct physical evidence.
Somebody says in the chat, Andrew Advent, Mr. Myers looks and sounds like General Hammond from Stargate. So there you go.
Oh man, what a compliment!
Yeah, Stephen Myers is got a presence to him here. He knows what he's talking about, and he's putting it out there. So, anyways, back to the discussion here. Well, our next step then is such a big project. Now we can get on to why did they build it. So there you go.
Are you asking me?
I most certainly am, Stephen.
Okay, what the original builders wanted was their little kids to be able to eat every day. They wanted to turn toil into leisure. They wanted to turn poverty into prosperity. And they did all that by building the infrastructure that modern people call the Great Pyramid. And the Great Pyramid was built with all those passages and chambers, more passages and chambers than the Pharaoh had bodies, so it doesn't look like a tomb. Anyway, they built this Great Pyramid so that it would be a water pump. Single purpose for the Great Pyramid, to pump water.
And just distribute water wherever they could.
That is right. It's like the Grand Coulee Dam up here in Washington. It's the largest structure ever built in North America.
Mm-hmm.
And it is, the most expensive structure built in North America when it was built. And all it does is move electrons in a wire. But it really helped. It makes enough electricity for 6 cities the size of Seattle. And it provides prosperity. And that's what the Great Pyramid did. It provided prosperity with the water. Well, water power to power machinery. Certainly irrigation to irrigate the land greater than just the yearly inundation. In a desert, you want water more than one event a year, if you will. Mm-hmm. And they, did a whole host of things with. I see the Giza Plateau is originally a research center or an industrial park, much more than a graveyard.
Okay, and you say to help run like machinery and stuff like so you believe they did have the ability to use machines back then? And you believe...
certainly.
Okay.
They had some sort of machine or technology to cut the stones, and they had certainly surveying technology to survey in a very precise manner, and a whole bunch of other stuff. There's a lot of ancient technologies associated with ancient Egypt, as well as specifically the Great Pyramid.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, they had it was a high technology society, I think.
Dave Plouffe in the chat again. If you're listening on any podcast platform, we're doing this live on YouTube right now, and I am just saying hi to Dave Plouffe. He says greetings all. Andrew Advent, William Stillings, Raiders AK, all you guys in the chat. If you guys have a question as we're progressing in the discussion here, feel free to type it in there. I will see it, and I will ask Stephen. Again, the whole distributing water, there's many other theories and stuff like that, Stephen. But one of the things is all of the chambers themselves and those little passageways, some of them that point out towards, and we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about aliens and the Great Pyramid, because I do want to touch on it. Even though you have, I'm sure your opinion and view is going to be stone hard. What are all those passages and chambers for then?
Everything about the Great Pyramid is to pump water. So they had a number of passages. And I think that water entered the Great Pyramid water pump through the upper end of the descending passage and went down into the subterranean chamber that we talked about. So the subterranean chamber is designed very unusual. It's there's no other room like it on Earth. And one end of it is very irregularly shaped. There's mounds from the solid rock that go up. It's like it was unfinished, is what they call it.
Right.
But the subterranean chamber was finished to perfection to serve the purpose. Water entered the far side away from that irregular part and moved in a spiral, if you will. And the irregular part acted like a water break and caused a vortex in that chamber, used the power of implosion that Victor Schauberger wrote about and did research on. He was an Austrian naturalist who, in the 1930s and 40s, did a lot of research with implosion, the movement of fluids and air, liquids, and that type of thing. So I'm sure a lot of your listeners know about Victor Schauberger. But anyway, that compelled water to move up through the grotto and then up to the lower end of the Grand Gallery. That's the large passage, large chamber, if you will, that is at an angle.
Okay.
And so water entered the Grand Gallery. We think that electrolysis occurred in that chamber. Other researchers contend that electrolysis occurred in the Great Pyramid. That's, believe it or not as outlandish of an idea, which separated the hydrogen and oxygen in that chamber. Those two gases, when combined, are quite volatile. And the upper end of that chamber, we think that those gases were ignited at the proper time. And that ultimately, with valves and everything, I mean, it's quite complex, that ultimately caused a vacuum, which helped lift water, a huge water piston, probably weighing 300 tons or whatever, up in this grand gallery that's quite long and tall. So ultimately, that vacuum was released, and that water piston moved back down, and because of the nature of some valves and everything, compressed the water that's in the Queen's chamber. So the Queen's chamber is half full of water, half full of air, the upper half. So when additional water enters the Queen's chamber, it compressed the air in that chamber. And then ultimately, the water went through into the King's chamber, and the water exited the Great Pyramid water pump through the King's chamber vents. But that's a very abbreviated explanation. It's quite involved. And my second book, The Great Pyramid Prosperity Machine, describes in detail that process. It's kind of like describing how a V8 engine works, for people that aren't familiar with all of that. It's quite involved. And my second documentary has a lot of videos. It's called The Great Pyramid Water Pump. All of it's from Amazon. You can get it. And it describes with a lot of computer-generated animations that very abbreviated explanation I gave. So,
look, just search Stephen Myers on Amazon or check out the links below. There's a direct link straight to his Amazon page where all his stuff is. So you'll be able to find it quite easily. But yeah, abbreviated version, I get it. Oh boy, what was I going to say? So all of these, of course, all the artifacts, and if you even believe the, mummies that possibly were supposed to be in there and stuff. But that aside, I guess there were etchings and artwork that were in some of these tombs themselves. Were those put in after the fact, you think? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's certainly other buildings that were from ancient Egypt that have writing in them. Temples, certainly. The Valley of the Kings has a bunch of holes in the ground where the bodies of pharaohs have been found, and all of those have writings all over them. The ceilings, the walls.
The Great Pyramid did not, though?
All of that. Yeah, there's a lot of writing on that type of stuff. But on the Great Pyramid, there is no formal writing inside the Great Pyramid. There are some quarry marks in passages that were not accessible until the 1830s. And they used black powder to bust into those little areas. But there's no formal writings inside the Great Pyramid at all. It's without any writings inside it. You want to know why?
Why?
Don't need writing inside of a machine.
Exactly. I was going to let you say that.
Inside your car engine.
Yeah, right.
Maybe a few part numbers.
No. I mean, you're talking, and it's kind of making sense, even in the Queen and King's chambers with maybe the venting of the shafts and things like that. It's, again, I've got to read your book too itself. So,
it's very visual, the process of the water pumping, and a lot of people, it's a stumbling block because a lot of people can't even open the hood of their own car these days.
Right.
They're surrounded with technology, but they say, why does it need all that stuff to pump water? Lift the hood of your car and see all that mass of wires, pipes, and everything else.
Yep.
That's just the part you can see. All the car does is go forward and backward. Why does it need all that? It needs all that because it needs all that.
Right.
Go to a factory or go to an industrial site or a power plant Go to a hydroelectric dam. Oh, why does it need all that? Well, it needs all that because that's what it needs. Everything
Exactly.
is as complicated as it needs to be, but no more. So,
Right.
you know,
Got a question from the chat from Dave Plouffe. He says, "Does Stephen think any of the structures around the pyramids, the three smaller ones, and the Sphinx, had anything to do with the three Great Pyramids?"
there's a lot of structures around on the Giza Plateau.
Yeah.
Certainly some ramps, if you will, causeways is what they call them, and that type of thing. And there's some remains of a temple on the catch basin of the Nile, or some other things like that. But no, I think primarily the Great Pyramid was a standalone infrastructure to provide prosperity. And water pump is the biggest and most beneficial benefit or return on investment for that has been suggested for the Great Pyramid.
Okay. Any details on the pump itself? Do you want to talk about that at all?
Oh yeah, well, there's certainly my books, but
Right.
it provided prosperity for the civilization that built it, and the Great Pyramid was built, designed and built and finished as designed by geniuses who wanted to make their lives better, or their civilization better, and they built this huge structure at a huge cost. It's very expensive. This Great Pyramid, massive. But I think that the builders, it was a wise investment to build this structure. It returned 1,000-fold for the cost of building it. It wasn't just to hold a dead body so tomb robbers could see where the dead body was and the treasure.
Right.
So it wasn't so the aliens who could go clear across the universe needed a beacon to find Earth or whatever. So it wasn't any of that. It was to actually help people and to help their kids. It wasn't to tell us 10,000 years later that they knew pi. So, it wasn't for that.
No. I mean, you make a lot of sense. That's for sure. I would have to say what your thoughts are, and I think I know what you're going to say, but what your thoughts are on the amazing amount of pyramids all across the world. Some similar to the Great Pyramid, but many definitely have their own purposes for their own cultures and stuff like that. But it is strange that you'll find a pyramid in Egypt and one all the way across in the continent of South America, supposedly, during the same period, if that's even possible. Again, we're getting back to exactly what time. But what are your thoughts on all these other pyramids around the world?
Well, there's a lot of pyramids around the world. If a civilization doesn't have steel I-beams and they want to make a tall structure, usually they will, if it's rock or rubble or stone, finely cut stone, they will pile that into a pyramid shape. And that's just a solution that is obvious to people around the world. There are pyramids around the world, but they also have different designs, different qualities of workmanship. Some could have been religious with platforms on the top and little structures and everything. Some could be used for human sacrifice or societal or religious purposes. But certainly the Great Pyramid stands alone in its quality of design and precision. So
definitely alone. There's not another pyramid out there that kind of has the same purpose, the water pump theory.
Oh well, a lot of pyramids out there, and I can't do it all. If somebody wants to study, if somebody wants to dedicate their life to studying any other pyramid to determine its purpose, I invite them to do that. But the focus of my research certainly
Yeah.
is the Great Pyramid. No, the Great Pyramid's quite distinct from other pyramids. The Grand Gallery inside the Great Pyramid,
Mm-hmm.
if it wasn't already inside the Great Pyramid, as the Great Pyramid's a wonder of the world, the Grand Gallery itself would be a wonder of the world. So yeah, the Great Pyramid is pretty unique and distinct in a lot of ways. So no, I think other pyramids certainly had different purposes, different designs created by different cultures using different technologies. That's for sure. Both ancient and modern. There's a big pyramid in Las Vegas. I've been there.
Yep.
It's a prosperity machine for those who own it.
Yes, it is. Yep. Okay. I mean, so you do have the book, Lost Technologies. Are there any other things that you've come across in all of your research that stands out to you with the Great Pyramid, other than the water pump? Any other kinds of, lost technology that you would like to make us aware of? Yeah.
Oh yeah, certainly.
Okay.
There is a method to cut stones that the builders had. That technology is lost. Egyptologists talk about the hand tools to make the precision stone cutting.
Mm-hmm.
All that indicates is that all books written by Egyptologists have that same error in it. And if Egyptologists can't even get a casing stone right, they can't even understand that. There's a whole bunch that they are wrong about. So there is a precision stone cutting technology, and also the bonding agent. That would be certainly valuable nowadays if it wasn't too expensive to make. It probably would be handy in modern construction. So we probably have alternatives now, but that's another technology. Certainly logistics. They probably had a method to communicate from the quarries to the building site and other things like that. Organization, that type of
communication.
thing. So high culture that built the Great Pyramid,
Okay.
to say the least, but not nothing about knuckle draggers or slaves or anything primitive. If you hear anything, when you hear the word primitive or even agrarian society, then you're being misled.
You said communication. What kind of how did they use communication?
Well, you have a large construction project, and it requires a method to move stones. It requires, on anything, a method to organize the workforce. So they probably had some method to communicate. I'm a ham radio operator, so they probably could communicate to the quarries. Some quarries were 400 miles away.
Have you ever
able to move stones? The heaviest stones were from the farthest away quarry.
But no idea how they communicated, though.
Yeah, I don't know the exact if it was mirrors, if they had primitive.
No, I hear you.
They could have had electronics or radio. There's.
They could have had flying machines go from place to place, but
could have had a lot of things. Yeah. But they all researchers, including Egyptologists, acknowledge that they use barges to move stones. Many of the quarries are across the river, and some are 400 miles away. So they all acknowledge that barges were used. I just consider the builders to be geniuses and were able to keep the stones on barges all the way up to the building site. And our video series shows specialized barges used to move and manipulate the stones and set them in place. So I hope people watch our video series on our website.
Definitely. And your YouTube channel too. Do you have videos pertaining to that on the YouTube channel?
I do. We have that YouTube channel, which can be reached from our website, has that series as well. It's free for people.
Okay.
We're a nonprofit foundation. There's, funding's an issue. But yeah, they can watch the whole series. Some short videos. Some are just like 6 minutes. Some are maybe 12 minutes, about 14 of them or so. and describe the beginning to end how the Great Pyramid was assembled, including the largest stones and the capstone.
Okay. I'd like to touch on some things that, like I said, I probably know what you're going to say in your opinion on them, but maybe I don't. Again, everybody has their own theory, and I just like to hear you chime in on a few theories that are out there and what your thoughts are on them. One being, of course, the number one theory: aliens created the Great Pyramid. And there is an awful lot that goes towards, saying, okay, that's some interesting information you have there. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Uh, the actually, who built the Great Pyramid, could be aliens or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is beyond the scope of my research. It's beyond the focus,
Okay.
but it's a good subject.
Oh yeah,
I'm
definitely.
not interested as much as who did it, but how it was done and why would they do such a thing.
Right.
So aliens. The reason why aliens are brought up is because this Great Pyramid seems to be an opart, an out of place artifact.
A mystery.
It's a ultra modern, high technology skyscraper that comes from distant antiquity. So people say, oh, well, it must be out of this world or aliens. But I think that there were ancient people who were geniuses, like maybe a Nikola Tesla type of person, or who figured out alternating current in one day. You and I, would take us a little longer because we're not geniuses.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
But or a guy like Victor Schauberger, or some other people, some chemists that could make this bonding agent. And water locks are not very complicated. They're a lost technology to be understood, to be associated with the Great Pyramid. But I mean, that's not very sophisticated by any means.
Right.
So, but people say, well, there was aliens. Well, what I think is that if you think it was aliens,
Mm-hmm.
then you must think that ancient people weren't smart enough to build the Great Pyramid. The two are exclusive.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Again, it's just things to ponder about who did it or when it was done.
Yeah.
But if you believe aliens did it, you also think ancient people weren't smart enough to do it. Very ethnocentric, if you will.
Are you a skeptic at heart, or do you want to believe? I mean, do you believe that there is something out there, or?
Oh yeah, there's certainly.
Okay.
I honestly do. I think there's more to the world than what we see, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's forces that have existed and still do that affect the world that we live in.
Mm-hmm.
If it's not necessarily aliens, but political issues,
Okay.
financial issues, and the geopolitical, and who's to say? I'm not against aliens, but I don't know why aliens would come a billion light years to Earth to stack rocks into a pile.
Yeah, that's interesting that you would say that.
It's just something to think about. Why do you think aliens would come here to stack rocks in a pile?
Yeah, I mean, there's many different. I mean, there's people who say it's for communication across the globe, for not even the globe, but from planet to planet, whatever. I mean, there's a million and one.
Ideas.
Yeah, there's a million and one different theories, even on the alien aspect of the Great Pyramids, and
maybe the aliens were the biblical God, and God built the Great Pyramid, and it has correlations that validate the Bible. There's a whole theory about that called pyramidology. Has all these correlations between that.
See, I got something out of you, Stephen.
Anymore.
Yeah. No, see, I got something out of you, Steve. No, that sounds that's a good answer. That's a good answer.
Look up pyramidology.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
and
Well,
it's a whole bunch of made up correlations that Bible believers believe in, but
well,
it's not as popular as it used to be.
yeah, yeah. No, I hear you. How about then? Let's segue into the flawed research techniques of the Orion correlation theory. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Great, yeah. It's my YouTube channel has a video with that title in
Yeah,
it,
you can
but
find more
yeah,
in-depth info if you go over
yeah.
there after the show and hear him discuss it.
Look it out. Yeah, there's a lot to it,
Hmm.
but yeah, they again, there's a bunch of people think that the Bible and the Great Pyramid are related, and the Bible confirms the Great Pyramid confirms the Bible. But nowadays, that biblical correlation theory has been replaced with the Orion correlation theory. So there's ideas of these. They built the Great Pyramid to come up with these symbolic correlations that has to do with the stars or whatever in Orion. But a lot of that, I think, the research methods to come up with that are quite flawed. They say that the precision validates the correlation, but that's in the realm of legitimate academic research. Precision doesn't validate a correlation. So the classic example of that is the rise in the global temperatures with the decrease in pirates. It's the global warming pirate correlation. And that's a classic example of a correlation. They have charts and everything about this correlation, except it doesn't have any causation. There's no causal relationship between the number of pirates and the increase in global warming. So there's a whole host of fake correlations. There's two main types of correlations, valid and invalid. And that's why legitimate academic researchers really have to watch the methods that they use to come up with their conclusions. And there's certainly no feature specific to the Great Pyramid which indicates the original builders intended any relationship between the Great Pyramid and Orion. Do you know of any?
No, true.
No, there's
Yeah.
nothing, and there's no feature to indicate that the Great Pyramid was a tomb, or that the Great Pyramid was symbolic by any means. So, it's a big structure. All hydroelectric dams have passages that point to stars.
Really?
Very precisely. There's a lot of stars up there, and if you got anything that points up, it's going to point to a star. But that doesn't mean that there's any
Right.
causal relationship between the builders of hydroelectric dams and the passages that point to stars. So,
Okay, good point.
It is. It is. It's a good point. And you can ask people that believe that theory, and a lot of people do. You can ask them, well, can a Great Pyramid correlation be invalid? You can ask that.
Yeah,
It's okay to ask that.
of course.
Well, you don't get a really coherent answer from that, because they know you're going to ask, how is a Great Pyramid correlation invalidated? And there's no real answer for that, because there's no method to invalidate a Great Pyramid correlation. In other words, that is not falsifiable. You need to look that up. If something is not falsifiable, then there's an issue with the research techniques. Here's another question. If you believe the Orion correlation theory,
Okay.
you will have a difficult time answering this question. Can a Great Pyramid correlation be valid? Even though they think they are valid, they believe them, they're not going to talk about it, because you're going to ask them, well, how do you validate it? Is there any causation to validate the correlation? No.
No, right? Yeah.
So
it's
so
a
there's
tough one.
issues with it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, those guys that write those books about that, they weave together a story, but when you get to the underlying research methods, it is quite flawed. As flawed as the Great Pyramid Bible correlation theory. So yeah, I do. Correlation theories come and go. Even phrenology, that science where
The head. Yep.
yeah,
Scalp.
the head, it has correlations with your character traits
Yes.
and with your moods or your psychology and all of that. Well, that science that was taught in universities has gone away because it was determined that it couldn't withstand the rigors of the scientific method. They had all these correlations, but the correlations were foundless. And that's the crisis that the Orion correlation theory is in now. A lot of people love that theory, but it is in crisis, just as the biblical correlation theory and phrenology. So they all use the same flawed research techniques, and they all will follow the same course of being popular, but then failing because they are wrong.
Right. Okay.
I'm just ahead of the curve on that.
Yeah. Well, people could come back and tell you kind of the same thing on some of. I mean, the only thing that gets me with the not that I don't believe it. There's so many theories out there, Stephen, and it's nice to listen to them all and make your own judgment on things. The one thing with the water pump theory, it all sounds great, and I love it. I just would wish there were some remnants of the lock still there, something left behind to show that this was a gigantic, enormous water pump. And
yeah,
so that's the only.
I wish there was.
Yeah, it doesn't take away from anything, but yeah.
Yeah, I know, but my research has quite a dividing line between how it was assembled. And how it operated or how it worked as a water pump.
Right.
But the lack of water lock evidence certainly is just about one half of the research, if you will. It doesn't affect how it operated. So,
okay.
But yeah, I know what you mean. There is a lack of evidence for a lot of things, in ancient times. So.
Yeah, no.
What can you say? You have the direct physical evidence that everyone else has. There are no secret evidence or anything like that. And then you provide an explanation for that evidence. So,
what's your idea on? The gold capstone that everybody says is there, but being hidden, and
Oh yeah.
If that were put on, it would bring it to life again. It would reactivate the Great Pyramid.
Sounds great.
Right. Okay.
It would be nice if there was some evidence that was involved in that. Oh yeah, there's this gold capstone that the aliens brought, and it's there's no evidence for it. Doesn't exist. There's much evidence for the gold capstone as there is for water locks. But we like the gold capstone up there, and then the Great Pyramid could vibrate, and we could communicate to South America. I mean, yeah,
right.
That's great. But you got to somewhere. You got to start with evidence. It's like the 72-foot tall giant that's under the Great Pyramid. There's no evidence for that.
Right.
So I wouldn't spend much time trying to disprove that or to prove a negative.
Well, right. So, you're told everything's locked behind, closed doors, and that's the reason we don't see it. But just like the Bigfoot.
The pictures of the water locks. They're right there next to the gold capstone.
Right, right.
Yeah, they got a big stone disc that if you put on a record player, it'll show up like a VHS thing on the screen, and it'll show the water locks.
Yeah, right there. I know. It's the
you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%.
You want to understand how it was built. You don't have to know about the religion. You don't have to know about their language.
Right.
You don't have to know about anything if you want to know how stones were assembled. That's even true with Notre Dame. You don't have to read the Bible to understand how Notre Dame was assembled. So, I'm just trying to stay at least 1 foot in reality.
No, I hear you. I get exactly what you're saying, and totally. I mean, it's brought a new light for me learning about this for sure. So your idea, well, so the other pyramids around it, they're just, have nothing to do with the Great Pyramid itself. It's just they happen to be there. I mean, there's images of like there's the stored grain theory too. There's images even of them.
Yeah, Ben Carson, presidential candidate, was an advocate of that the Great Pyramid was a granary. And here I'll tell you how that came about.
Okay.
In the 17th century, they had a Bible, and there's granaries in Egypt in the Bible. You can read about it. It's right there. Well, there's big buildings in Egypt. Well, it must have been the granaries right there, But that's a theory that is kind of been rejected by a lot of people, except for some presidential candidates. Okay. So you can come up with ideas and explanations, but it really helps to at least examine the direct physical evidence. But the other pyramids, they could have been built by different civilizations.
Yeah.
They could have been built not just a generation between each of them, but 10,000 years between the Great Pyramid and the big one right next to it. So, there's certainly no feature specific to the Great Pyramid that indicates the builders of the Great Pyramid intended any relationship between that pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and the pyramid next to it. But they are there. And there's a lot of explanations as why they're there. Maybe they had a different purpose. Maybe they did some other functional thing. Yeah. But another explanation is some of the other pyramids that are much more primitive in construction were built in a kind of like a cargo cult. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
What was that? Cargo cult?
Cargo cult. That's like during World War II, the Americans would go to these isolated islands, and the people never saw airplanes, ships, or anything. Right. And they worshipped these guys as gods. And they made planes out of palm branches and radios out of little wooden crates, with fake knobs, if you will, to try to summon these gods back who brought cargo, if you will, canned food and knives and metal and stuff like that. So it's maybe these other pyramids, some of them were built as some sort of a cargo cult structure.
Yeah, replicate that's a possibility. Replicate the. Dave Plouffe in the chat says, "Well, I definitely don't hear about pyramids from other areas of the world being used as tombs." And he also says in Egypt there were what's he saying? Mastabas, and those were
mastabas. Yeah, there's mastabas,
and those were more tombs.
They were tombs, sure. They were a hole in the ground with some rocks on top of them. Some of them. Also, a lot of the pharaohs were in the Valley of the Kings, which has nothing to do with any pyramid. And they are just buried in holes in the ground.
Right.
So, in the United States, we had a very revered leader that died, John Kennedy. We didn't make a big monstrous pyramid to put him inside of. No, we put him in a hole in the ground and have a little eternal flame. There's no sense in it. How do long open passageways that have pivoting doors on pivots, keep a pharaoh's coffin and his treasure safe? No coherent answer will emerge from that question.
No, and very interesting, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's other theories out there too. Probably none worth mentioning. I mean, Noah built the Great Pyramid. That's another one.
Yes. Yeah. There's that pre-flood or whatever. The aliens. That's fine. And different purposes. Certainly as a weapon or a beacon and that type of thing. But water pump provides the most return on investment than any other proposed purpose for this massive structure.
Yeah.
So
no,
we could build a pyramid. We could build a great big pyramid over in Nebraska.
Right.
And spend $10 billion building it, and its purpose would be to point to stars that we like, or to tell people 10,000 years ago from now that we knew pi. But the reason why we don't do that is because for us that would be stupid.
True.
And for ancient people, it would be stupid for them too. They didn't care about us. They wanted their kids to have food in their stomach, and they wanted leisure. Just like we built hydroelectric dams, nuclear power plants, power grids, our highway systems are all infrastructure that we're inundated with to provide prosperity.
No, hey, it's a very plausible theory, and one that's just as good, if not better, than a lot of the other ones I've heard of. So, I mean, kudos to you for really hitting this hard and diving into research and letting the people know what your thoughts are. So yeah, no, it's just as good as anything else, that's for sure. Well, hey, let's. I think we've pounded the pump enough, right? And I could most certainly ask you all kinds of, like, what you think of this or that, but I think I know your position on the Great Pyramid for sure. You do got a trip to Egypt coming up in the next year.
We do. November of next year, it's about a year away. I'll be leading a tour group to Egypt. So we get to go over there and talk about the Great Pyramid. I'll have several lectures, PowerPoint presentations, and be on site in Egypt and to talk to the people in the tour. And we're not just going to the Great Pyramid, we're going to a bunch of other sites, as well as having a big, those great big boats that goes on the Nile. So we'll have a trip on the Nile and everything. It'll be wonderful. But that's put out by Sacred Sites Journeys.
Okay.
And there's a link on our site to their website. And Mark and Andrea have been doing tours for 25 years all over the world. And they're consummate professionals. And I hope people consider going on the tour with us and getting into details about all of this stuff right at the Great Pyramid water pump. Wouldn't that be fun? So sacredsitejourneys.com or our website, and you can find out about our upcoming tour to Egypt.
Yeah, thepump.org. Easy enough.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything specific? Because I know you've been there before. Other than the Great Pyramid and everything you've invested in your research with the pump and all that. Anything else in Egypt, in and around there, that kind of like, boggles your mind, that you just, wow, and maybe one day I'd like to start doing some research on, this, in particular. Anything?
Oh yeah. I haven't been there yet, but I want to. I want to go to the largest structure in Egypt. And that largest structure is the most expensive structure that was ever built in Egypt. And it is pumping water right now. I want to do that. So that would be a lot of fun.
Really? Okay. What is that?
That's the High Aswan Dam.
High Aswan. Okay.
In modern times, they needed to pump water in Egypt. So they built the High Aswan Dam. It makes electricity. And a lot of that electricity is used for irrigation. Wow. Modern people needed a huge structure
right
in the Valley of the Nile that provides irrigation. It's the capstone of a huge irrigation project. We think the Great Pyramid, although they operated differently, was built in ancient times by people in the Valley of the Nile to serve the same purpose of providing prosperity for the people that built it. So how's that for an answer?
That was perfect. What a great correlation, huh?
It's interesting.
Yeah, one water pump to another.
Always. People in the Valley of the Nile have always needed water pumping infrastructure.
Well, I hope one day they find what am I trying to say? The number one, thing to prove your point, evidence and prove your point. totally. So hopefully that day will come eventually. But until then, we're going to get many, many stories and many theories, many books, many videos, many shows.
Oh yeah. The Great Pyramid has more books written about it than any other structure on Earth.
Yeah,
so
it's
that's kind of interesting. Yeah,
it's captivating for sure. But yeah, no, this has been real fun, Stephen. I would tell everybody to go check out the links below and check out Stephen's YouTube channel. He's got a lot of free information there, but also, go to the Amazon place, the place where you get all your goodies at, and catch his book, his video, and yeah, there you go.
Both my books are on Amazon Prime or whatever as ebooks.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have Kindle Unlimited or Amazon Prime, you can download them for free.
Isn't that a neat thing?
Yeah, that's why I'm broke. So.
Right? Yeah, thousands and thousands of ebooks. Yeah.
Yeah, both DVDs are on Amazon, so I hope you find out about it. The only thing I ask people to do is, instead of saying, "Oh no, it was a tomb," or "Oh no, these correlations are the way to go," is to conduct research. I'm a researcher, and I just naively think that everyone is a researcher. But the most revolutionary thing I can tell people to do is to read a book. That's what people used to do before there was Facebook.
Right.
Go read a book, find out about it, find out the details before you make a judgment about what this is all about.
No, 100%. Yeah, I mean, if you disagree, do a little research yourself and see what you come up with. Like you said, we should all be researchers. But again, thanks to everybody in the chat. I appreciate you coming and hanging out with us. And again, this will be up on iTunes, Spotify, Google, anywhere podcasts are. Again, subscribe. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. The bell, all that good stuff for in the YouTube universe. And and again, check out all the links below. They're right there. And Stephen, thank you so much for joining me. And until next time, Stephen. I guess hang on there and let me close out the show. But thank you very much.
For having me on the show, and it was an honor and a privilege.
Awesome. Thank you so much, man. And again, check out Paranormal Into the Night, you guys. More shows coming up real soon. Check out the Facebook group, the Facebook page, Paranormal Into the Night. Tons of activity on those two pages, especially the Facebook group, Paranormal Into the Night. A lot of great people. Nisa, she's a great mod in there, and she posts a lot of fun paranormal stuff. And it's really nice to have somebody take and sculpt that group for me and do what she does. So props to her. And if you want to be a guest, you can also check out the links below and all that. Message me on Facebook, the groups. Would love to hear who would like to be a guest. So there you go. And with that said, until next time, everybody take care and love the paranormal.